Hey, I'm happy to have Dr. Nicole Deziel with us again today. We would like to discuss with you a little more about the water study in East Palestine and some questions that we have received about the study, just to give folks in the area some more clarity about the study. And we are, 8 months into the study at this point? And most recently, we've been happy to bring forth and have participants filling out a survey. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So our big initiative right now is this water quality survey that we've launched to the community. And our Yale Water project has a few different components. One of them is a drinking water model that we could talk about later that's going to be used to sort of show where the chemicals from the spill and the controlled burn, how they moved through the environment and the water supply. But while our modelers are working on that, we launched this drinking water survey to help us inform the model and make sure when we do this modeling, we're doing it kind of in response to the community's biggest questions and concerns. So I don't know, I think it takes about 10 minutes to do it. It's available on Qualtrics. And also we have paper copies at the way station and other places in the community. And it asks people questions about their drinking water supply and any either chemicals or areas of concern or any questions they might have about their drinking water. And we'll use all that to help us, as we move forward with the other parts of our project.
People who were not necessarily impacted are just as valuable to this study as people who think that they were. Is that right?
Yes. So anyone who lived within 50 miles of the derailment and who is 18, who can give consent to do it, is eligible. And we welcome all types of feedback. This is particularly important for the health study, which is a separate but related study. But even for our water study, yes, we are looking for people kind of in the immediate area, but also a little further away. And also we don't really know how far the impact spreads. So, we don't even know that at this point. That's something our model can tell us.
Now, you mentioned the health study, and this is something that I think might be a point of confusion for some folks, because for people on the ground in East Palestine, it feels like there's been a lot of studies that have come through. So this one currently is the University of Kentucky, the University of Pittsburgh, and Yale University. Can you talk about how they're different, what each of you are doing, and sort of what's the umbrella that this is under?
So there's a larger project called the East Palestine Research Program, and University of Kentucky is leading the health study. And that is enrolling hundreds of people in the community and in some other areas that are similar but did not experience the derailment as a comparison group. And they're looking at a whole range of different health outcomes and symptoms. The Yale Water Study is part of this overarching research program, but our survey and our modeling effort is kind of independent of what the health study is doing, although we're constantly communicating with each other and talking to each other so that both these studies are really, informed and relevant with regard to, both health and water and exposures.
And how's the funding for this study work? Because I know that that's a question I've heard as I've canvassed around the area, dropping flyers off for the water study. There have been questions about where are you getting your money? How's this being funded?
Yeah, so this study is completely funded by the National Institutes of Health, and the project itself was announced by J.D. Vance, and the Director of Health and Human Services is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. The NIH falls under that. So they have dispersed the funds to us, to University of Kentucky, University of Pittsburgh, and Yale, and we are carrying out the research.
If I could just add that in the early months after the derailment, there was a lot of concern and outrage, I would say, about the role that Norfolk Southern played in not only the decisions that were made about the controlled burn and about evacuation zones and where the testing was done and just all of it. But in this case, for this research, Norfolk Southern has nothing to do with it. Correct?
Zero role. Correct. They have zero role in this research, in any part of this research. This research is completely independent. And I know some people, are kind of questioning the value of universities right now, but one big value I see is that we are not beholden to any interests, not NIH, not Norfolk Southern, not any interest group really. We're just
environmental groups. You're not
environmental
groups. No, right.
Yeah, in the sense, well, I guess, yeah, maybe we have a responsibility to be responsive to the public.
Okay.
Too, I guess, but in a way that also does the best science, I guess. And it's more of the public, the community groups, environmental groups can provide ideas, suggestions, inputs, but ultimately, the university researchers are kind of deciding, and we're trying to use the best methods, tried and true scientific methods to answer the questions that the groups have. So, in that sense, like groups like Ohio Valley Allies aren't telling us exactly how to do the research, but we're asking the community, tell us what your questions are. Tell us what you're concerned about. Tell us what places, you think may have been overlooked. So in that sense, we are getting input, but then ultimately we'll use that to try to inform the best, most relevant science.
Awesome. That's so great. And that was, you explained it very well, right, Stuart?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I guess this might be like insider baseball, but as a researcher, how do you sort of protect the science, quote unquote? Like what mechanisms do you use? I mean, I know peer review is one of them, but are there other things for those of us laymen?
Yeah, well, I guess one thing is that our whole proposal was went under peer review. So a committee of experts reviewed it to make sure it was, grounded in sound science. It made sense, and it was reviewed very highly, which was why it got selected. And, even actually the NIH they do have some oversight. Again, they're not influencing the findings, but they do make sure that we are carrying things out in a responsible way, that we're moving in a timely manner, things like that. Our protocol was also reviewed by our university IRBs, these institutional review boards that make sure we are taking seriously people's confidentiality and privacy, and we're not overburdening people. So there's many layers of review that come into this.
I mean, this is another advantage to institutions, to get to your previous point. Like, I know people have a lot of strong opinions about institutions, but the reality is that with an organization like Yale or Harvard or Stanford, you expect a level of professionalism that you probably are not going to find with a lot of independent sort of outfits. Not necessarily that the independents are not doing good work or anything, but it's just that what you just described, like that due diligence and just that protection of people's data and privacy and medical records if they're involved, the institutional level, I think the standard would be much higher, would be my assumption.
Yeah. Absolutely, because anyone can post anything online about their opinions, but we're carrying out very methodical, rigorous research. I should say, and it isn't just the institutions we're accountable to, because we all met in February. We had a community meeting. We presented the research there as well. We're using the survey to solicit some input or feedback. And I also wanted to add too that you, Jill, our colleagues at Maha, Ohio, others, reviewed the survey too. So we're certainly getting a lot of input from folks, and we made many modifications to the survey. Again, from your feedback directly from residents, and other organizations like yours, to make sure, it made sense. It was not too burdensome. Again, it's addressing we're not missing something important, an important question.
And I think that going back again to immediately after the derailment and this disaster, people were really concerned about their water, not only in the short term, but long term. I know some folks are still drinking bottled water 3 years later. And so when I thought about this project, this research and the funding from NIH, if any of that could go towards finding answers for residents about their water quality and the potential impact to it long term, I just think it's so valuable. And I guess, do you agree with that, Nicole? And how will your research support that?
Yeah, so our survey which we will also share publicly, will be able to highlight what people's concerns are and what their priorities are. And then the model will show how the pollutants would have spread through the environment and can show which areas of water may have been impaired and which ones aren't impaired. And like at what time scale too, because some pollutants take time to move through the environment. So I certainly hope it will provide answers to people. And the whole benefit of the model is that, there have been a lot of measurements that have been taken by many different government agencies, which is, I think very valuable. However, we have heard from the community that some people don't think these were complete or were not necessarily of the right chemicals or the right time or the right location. So the model can help fill in the gaps, beyond where measurements were collected. And so, I think we think that will be really valuable for the residents.
And the thinking behind the model is that, we can't go back in time and take measurements from the day after. So this is sort of the next best thing. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. Short of a time machine, the model can at least try to predict, can use many different variables to predict where the contamination, if it occurred, where it occurred and when it occurred.
And if I'm going to say this right, a hydrogeologist is doing that model.
Yes. We have a really great hydrogeologist at Yale, James Sayers, and a new postdoc who's starting, another expert, Yang. And it really takes a specific expertise. And I really like working with James Sayers because he's looking at all the physical properties of the environment, the topography and the soil and the water and the rain and all of that. And I have the health expertise with Michelle Bell, our other colleague, and together it's like we're bringing all these different pieces of information and perspectives to try to do the best science. So I really value that kind of interdisciplinary science where we have hydrologists and public health people kind of working together on this problem.
And so any results that you get, how confident will you be in those?
Well, with the model, I think the modelers can kind of tell us that. So there might be some results they have high confidence in and some where there's, more uncertainty. So I think we'll try to share that. I mean, in the end, it's still a model. So, it's
a model based on there's certain laws in nature or, the water flows this direction.
Right.
The spill happened here. It's not going to travel up the hill and down the other. I mean, just to be very clear, there are some ways to make these determinations, to do this model with some level of certainty, or you wouldn't be, I don't know. I'm just trying for all those deniers or, does that make sense?
Yes, because as scientists, we're always, very cautious and we always have all these caveats. And I know it can be really frustrating. I'm sure Jim can phrase this much better, but there are many variables that are based on, like you said, solid hydrological principles, like water does not flow uphill and things like that. But there's probably some things within the model that, there's going to be some gaps, I'm sure, so some variables we may have high confidence in, like I said, or some scenarios, and some there may be some more uncertainty, but we'll try to say all that, so people, just so people have that information, like we have high confidence in this and, these other things are also possible, something like that. I mean, do you think that's helpful? Or do you think, I feel like it's very hard to try to you want to be simple, like simplify things and not have a million caveats, because then you lose sight of the main finding. But then also, if we don't acknowledge some of the uncertainty, people can be sort of skeptical or suspicious.
So for folks in the community who are watching this and wondering what is this research ultimately going to give them? Like, what's the deliverable that's relevant to them? What would you say that is?
Yeah. So we are aiming to build a model that shows which areas surrounding the derailment were likely to be impaired and which ones weren't, and what that will help inform additional testing, the health studies, additional health surveillance, monitoring, and hopefully give people some additional reassurance or information, especially by filling in the gaps in places where there wasn't specific measurements.
And would this be relevant to anyone, regardless of what their water system is, whether it's a well or spring or municipal water?
That's our intent, is to cover all of those water sources. Yeah. And we hope, we would like to do more with this. This is kind of the first phase of our project. So we hope that we could get some support to perhaps do some water testing in the future. It could be up to a 5-year project on the water, kind of based on what we find. It's like that.
But to be clear, there's no actual testing of water at the moment. That's not part of the research.
Right. Right now we have the survey and the model.
Okay, go ahead.
The model could then guide additional research and testing.
Right.
Beyond sort of what the deliverable is for the community, are you hopeful that this research might lead to better protocols or better plans for other incidents like the train derailment in the future?
Yeah, that's a really good point. The best research, would help this community, but also help other communities. So I think the model that we develop could be scaled or applied or generalized to other places. Even the survey and things we learn could be used to inform other incidents. I would really like to think about how this could be used to maybe develop some sort of toolkit or something else. We'll certainly be thinking about that as we kind of get all our data so that it's helpful, not just for the residents of East Palestine, but other communities for sure. And the residents have said that, right? That is their wish. Many people are participating in the research because they want not just to help their families, but to help other communities that might be impacted. So we're definitely, mindful of that.
When I was canvassing the area, handing flyers out to try to get people to be aware of this, I was asked a lot of different questions. Can I ask you 2 of them that came up kind of repeatedly? The first is, it seemed like everybody who had been in the area for a long time, regardless of where I was, because I was driving around a big radius from East Palestine, and it seemed like they all had some memory of some other chemical disaster that had occurred in the area, some big, scrapyard fire or something like that. And so I got this question repeatedly, like, where were you guys then? And why are you here now? And, I'm kind of curious what you think of that, because it just made me realize that these things happen a lot, maybe on a smaller level. Maybe they don't make the national news. But there was this kind of feeling like, where's this kind of research when the other things happen?
Right. That's a really valid point. We just saw in the last couple of weeks, there was some explosion in Washington state. And then there was a near disaster in California, like in LA, these tanks, right, that almost exploded but didn't. So there are many East Palestine. There are many examples of these types of disasters. And it's true, they don't all get the attention they deserve. I think part of it is our public health and environmental health infrastructure. We just don't have like a unit of the government that can go out and, respond to all of these things. I mean, there were responses, of course. I mean, I think this speaks to your idea, Stuart, to have something that's sort of can be repackaged and used in many different places. But I think one of the big answers is the funding. I mean, I know you've also heard from some people that they are frustrated that there's $10 million potentially going to this research and not necessarily going to medical services, compensation, relocation costs, and things like that. And I've been thinking about it because really this money comes from NIH, which is a research arm. So to me, it's more the question is there's only so much money for research, and $10 million of it is going to East Palestine. So I think that's a good thing that we can try to learn about this situation and hopefully use this information for other disasters. I mean, I guess another benefit of the research is it keeps this on people's mind in the news, as we get our results and share it with the public and try to make linkages to some of these other communities. And I know you two have been talking with groups, me as well, as there's so many communities that feel impacted by industrial waste, industrial emissions. Yeah, I think it's a real shame that we're not. I think they're right. We should be studying all of these. I'm just grateful we're at least studying this one very large episode. But I wish there was funding to support studying all of them.
Just to add to that science is always piggybacking on itself. So like your findings here in East Palestine could very well end up being relevant to some of those other sites, correct? I mean, that's how kind of science works. Like you might discover some connection between whatever, some breathing problem with these chemicals, and then that becomes applicable everywhere, right?
Right. That's a great point. Yes, I think that's right. I think there'll be a lot of lessons learned from this that can be built upon for other scenarios. Yeah.
And the other question I got a lot, you sort of already touched on it, was a lot of people were telling me, we need real help. We need them to buy our house out. We need more cleanup. We need medical care. Why is all this money going to this research? And, you kind of already touched on that. One of the things that I responded with was, those things are not mutually exclusive. Like you kind of have to have the research. All of those other things are sort of dependent on other agencies and other parts of the government and other, lawsuits and things like that. But a lot of that aid infrastructure kind of rests on the research in many cases, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really valid point. I really understand where people are coming from. Yeah, I think you said it just right. Like this funding is coming out of the National Institutes of Health, which funds research, and all those other aspects come from different agencies, and we don't have the ability to kind of transfer it over. And it's kind of coming from a totally different pot of money. And, I think help could be given in the absence of complete information of the research. So I certainly don't think we need to wait for the outcomes of the research to be able to offer people help and assistance. But the research certainly can help inform those services, and guide them.
Of all the research I've heard about for East Palestine, I think this could give residents something that they've really expressed concern about and an answer for them, or at least a better understanding, of their own impact, to their water. I really think that the water study is something that will be of benefit for sure. And the health study, even if I see that as beneficial on many levels, but I'm just instantly going back to interactions I've had with people in Parkersburg, West Virginia, where they participated in the health study there after DuPont and C8 and the water contamination that occurred there. And whether it was determined to be related to that contamination issue or not, these folks got testing done and found, health impacts, health problems that they otherwise wouldn't have had. So I think I just think that what does it hurt? Like the most skeptical person of scientists, research, another study. I mean, what is it gonna, a little bit of time maybe, and it really might. I think there's a good likelihood that it will help the individuals, the community, but also in the future, other communities who might be in a similar, find themselves in a similar situation with some kind of disaster.
I think everyone should, if they're able to, it'd be great if people took our water survey and also signed up for the health study. That would be great. Yeah. And as we've talked about before too, even if people aren't that concerned or don't have symptoms, that's important too, for the study to be representative. We want everyone taking all the surveys, because if only the people who, feel they've been impacted take it, then, we don't have a good comparison group. So we want the whole spectrum of all the residents. I would like to thank both of you. And I know, Stuart, you were really doing a lot to get the word out to other people. You and Jill and Ohio Valley Allies are doing so much. So I really appreciate that. Also, Elizabeth Frost with Maha, Ohio has, I think, been kind of letting people know about the survey. So, and we do have 50 people have completed it already, which I think is terrific. But it'd be nice to get some more responses. So I hope people will hear this and decide to just take 10 minutes and just do it. And hopefully you'll feel good that you contributed to this research.
Wonderful. Thank you,
Okay.
Nicole. But please don't hang up, because I have one other question.
Okay, so I'm going to sign into the East Palestine Train Derailment Health Research Program. I'm going to look at the Water Research Project, and I'm going to take the water survey. You can find it all on that first initial page, which is research.uky.edu/environment/East Palestine Health Research. There's a dash in between all those words. And I'll put a link in the video description for that. Okay, and then we're gonna do next to continue. Yes, I am at least 18 years old. Would you like to receive a summary of the overall findings from the community water survey once it's complete? Yes. Do you give permission for us to contact you for future research studies? Yes. And then I'm going to type in my address and email address. Okay. This section of the survey asks about water-related issues around the time of the derailment. Asks what your zip code was. What was your main source of drinking water at home before the derailment? We have a spring on our farm. What other sources of drinking water do you routinely consume at home? We do have a private well. If you have a private well, about when was the private well built? Oh man, I am not sure. If you have a private well, I think we are that. So it asks the depth of the well. February 2023, we had a sediment filter. In the days or weeks after the derailment, did you notice any of the following changes in your tap water or drinking water? So now it's asking me if I noticed anything in the surface or groundwater, odors, unusual foam, a sheen. What is the primary source of your drinking water now? Same situation. Now we have a number of different filters. For the derailment, how confident were you that your tap water was safe to drink? How confident are you that tap water is safe to drink now? How satisfied are you with the information you have seen or received about water quality test results? What part of water-related testing information, if any, is lacking? Have you had your water tested since the derailment? Yes. Below is a list of chemicals that could be included in the water quality model we are developing. What chemicals, if any, related to the derailment are a concern for you? That's it. What location, if any, do you believe should be prioritized for water quality modeling? Next section. What is my age? What is my gender? What best describes my race? Oops, don't want to get that one wrong. Please share any additional comments, concerns. And then there's a comment section at the end. Okay, that was it. So 7 minutes it took me to do that survey. Very easy to complete. Should have done it sooner, but like I said, I've just been too busy. But now it's done, and I feel good. I've contributed to science.